The fabulous thing about having our team of trainers here at CBT be remote means that we get to hire the best trainers from anywhere in the world, rather than restricting our pool to those who are willing to relocate to Eugene, although it is quite beautiful here. But of course, trainers need a quiet environment in order to record. So yes, it makes perfect sense for them to be working from their homes. But the focus of this particular video is to share with you some of the lessons that I've learned when you're managing remote teams. Because wonderful though it can be, it's not always easy. Your day-to-day objectives don't change just because you're suddenly working with a remote team or you're now back in the office with your coworkers. You're there as a manager to drive your business organization's goals. You are also there to make sure you're supporting your team effectively. And along the way, you want to make sure you're taking care of your own sanity. But as you're doing all of this, being remote versus being in the office does change some of the mechanics on how you get that done. When Simona first mentioned this video, I started talking to other managers throughout CBT who work with remote teams as well. Now, whether we were talking about trainers or designers or even DevOps, 3 things were consistent in every conversation. You need to trust your team. You need to set expectations with your team, and you must establish consistent communication with the team. Trust, expectations, and communication all go hand in hand when you're managing remote teams. Trust within the team is what pivots those conversations from outputs. How many hours did you work? Did you step away from your desk too many times today? And changes the conversations into ones about outcomes. What are the deliverables that you are driving towards as a group in order to better your organization and the experience for your users? From a trust perspective, it's like any other relationship. You need to make sure that there's trust both ways. But because you are the team lead, it is your responsibility to put the structure in place that enables and empowers that trust. And that's where the expectations and communication come in. From an expectations perspective, there may be some minutia about little details that matter in how the team should operate. For example, you may say that Slack statuses need to be kept up to date. If you're going to be running an errand, make sure you set yourself to away. Or if you're in a video call, turn on your camera. Make sure we can see each other. That's so important. And I know that it's been brought up in other videos, but it's worth mentioning again. Another thing that may matter is that you at your organization have certain hours where everyone needs to be available. But when you're talking about expectations for a team member, it's important to make sure that each individual does understand how they're contributing to the overall organization. And it's really important to remember that you can often be their only conduit for this. There's no water cooler conversation or hallway chatter to overhear. And depending on how your organization communicates information, a lot of the expectation from above could be that this all comes through you. So reminding your team members about what they're working on and how it's integrated into the larger picture of the organization is so incredibly important. Out of sight, out of mind is something to keep in mind when you're managing remote teams. And I don't mean that you're going to forget that you have a team member out there. What I mean is for them, they don't have the day-to-day activity right in their face about what is happening to the organization, to your community, to your users. And so you providing that information to them helps build much broader context and helps keep them much more engaged, which brings us to communication. When you're talking about ways in which to communicate with your teams, the right amount of communication will likely vary team member by team member. You're going to have some members of your team that may want to talk every day and touch base and ensure that they're going on the right direction. You may also have other team members who are perfectly comfortable only touching base when things pivot or when there are large status changes in the project. But regardless of the one-on-one interactions that you have, establishing constant team meetings is a great way to make sure that there's camaraderie and understanding across the group. For the trainers here at CBT, as an example, we meet every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, and while we do talk about organizational changes, we talk about what the team is working on, it's a fantastic way for us to get together and see what each other is up to. There really is a bonding that happens because we're all there on a call together. So one of my coworkers made a great suggestion that she had done at a previous company, which is every morning they had an optional coffee talk for all their remote employees. And you could jump on if you wanted for a few minutes here or a few minutes there, but a standing 15-minute video call where as you were first getting your caffeine into your system, you could all touch base and talk. And that becomes so important as well. Depending on the project that you're working on, it may also be valuable to keep a video link up for an extended period of time. If you're triaging an issue, there may be a way in which, as you gain new information, people from different teams can jump on and work on something together. So having that available can be very helpful when you're working on particular projects. As Simona alluded to in an earlier video, being remote can be incredibly productive. And there's that desire, even as a manager, to hunker down and finally get through that to-do list. But remember, as a manager, part of your job is taking care of the people on your team. And so, as you're getting through that to-do list, keep an eye on their communication. How engaged are they in those video calls? Has their communication within Slack or within Teams changed in a way that they don't seem as engaged? And as those things get noticed, make sure that they're addressed. Make sure that as part of your ongoing one-on-one or an impromptu conversation, you bring that up and find out what is going on to address any obstacles before they start. More and more people are finding that working from home can be just as effective for them as working in the office. And when you're the manager for these employees, remember that establishing that trust, setting those expectations, and bridging that gap for communication is what will continue to empower them to be just as effective along the way.